make a motion for approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next item is Mayor's report. I have nothing to report, although some of us will be going in March to the legislative session of the Tennessee Municipal League. So we'll be going to Nashville for a couple of days, and then following that, also in March, is the National League of Cities congressional meeting, and some of us are going to that. So that's coming up. We'll be reporting on those events as they happen. Anybody else have anything to report at this point?
Just want to thank the Public Works Department for the job last week, although we didn't get a lot of snow in Farragut. Other parts of the community did, but I did see several trucks out when I was out and about that afternoon, so I know we were ready and on alert and taking care of whatever was going to happen, but appreciate the effort of everybody in that department.
Next item is Citizens Forum.
I have one person done it. It's Mole Wyman at 528 Wyndham Hall Lane.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. I'm here tonight to request that you formally adopt the Town of Farragut 2025 Comprehensive Land Use Plan. And I'll explain this. First, though, I would like to hand out some information to all the members of the board. I have prepared what I call talking points. Adoption of the Town of Farragut 2025 Comprehensive Land Use Plan for the meeting tonight. And the first two items on the first sheet, I'm not sure that the board has received the certified adoption resolution from the Planning Commission. I don't know if that has come to you yet or not. In any event, the third sheet of the handout is the resolution that the Planning Commission adopted at their December 20th meeting. It hasn't been signed, but it is available on the website. And I think Gary explained that on item number 2, has the final plan been received by the board? I don't believe it has. I believe you mentioned, Gary, that it's in process and will be available shortly.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. There are basically two fundamental reasons why the Board of Mayor and Aldermen should adopt the plan. The first one is what I call certainty, and the second one is what I call consistency. The board approved the expenditure of $100,000 for the consultant working with the comprehensive plan leadership team to prepare the plan for the Planning Commission. The certainty simply says that adoption of the comprehensive plan, not only by the Planning Commission, but by the legislative body, that is you all, provides certainty to the community, the town staff, and to the planning commission that you fully support the plan and the plan implementation, which David Smoke talked about earlier. And consistency means that your decisions, not only land use decisions, but other decisions that are made based on the comprehensive plan are consistent with the plan and those of the planning commission. I'll give you a great example of this. Pal Acres. When the comprehensive plan came before the planning commission on December 20th, there were several neighbors in here from Pal Acres, and they were very upset that their subdivision, entire subdivision, not zoned, but shown on the comprehensive plan as commercial. And so what happened? Well, after 2.5 hours, that was removed and it was replaced, showing all the land area for Pal Acres to be residential. So that is what the plan is for. And if the plan needs to be amended, it can and should be. But that's a great example of how this works. It's not rocket science, but it's workable. Okay. Before the December 20th, 2012, the Farragut zoning ordinance, the text and the map, really was the land use plan for the town. Now, you had a 2001 land use and transportation policy, but the zoning ordinance text and map, absent an adopted land use plan, is your plan, is your vision for the town, particularly the map. Okay. In 2011, you adopted, and I emphasize the word adopted, the strategic plan. That plan is on the wall on the other side of the sheriff's deputy. Right there on the wall. You have adopted that. That plan, the major road plan, the capital investment plan, the parks, greenways, and circulation plan have all been adopted by the town. All of these plans have been folded into the comprehensive plan. They have been folded and formed, that is, they have been graphically illustrated in the comprehensive plan. It's not just a land use plan, it is a quote-unquote comprehensive plan. Okay. So that at their December 20th meeting, the Planning Commission, by adopting the plan, affirmed the plan, the comprehensive plan, as the basis for all, and I emphasize all, town planning, including the strategic plan, the major road plan, capital investment plan, parks, greenways, and circulation plan, and at some time in the near future, the Parks and Leisure Services Plan, it's my understanding that it will come before you to be adopted. It needs to be updated. And my understanding is that will happen in the near future. So it's really counterintuitive, not for the board of mayor and aldermen, for them not to adopt the plan. Every other plan has been, you have adopted every other plan. You go online, look at the town website, look under documents, and every one of those that's listed has been adopted. Every one. Okay. Now, the Planning Commission on that third sheet in that adoption resolution will certify the plan to you, but based on the recommendation of the Comprehensive Plan Leadership Team, did not opt to recommend adoption to you. And I can't tell you the rationale behind that because as far as I know, those meetings of the leadership team were not open to the public. So I don't know what the thinking was of the leadership team, but they didn't recommend to the Planning Commission adoption of the plan to the board. I've indicated here that the plan cannot be implemented if not adopted. That's probably not totally true, but just think about it. There are over 30 recommended actions in the comprehensive plan. Over 30. Some of those are already in the strategic plan and in your town budget. Goal 4 of the strategic plan. It's right on the wall over there. Goal 4. Facilitate future growth and development and redevelopment, because the plan is dealing not only in development, community development, but there's 3 really key features. Development, redevelopment, and infill. And there's 8 areas in the plan that specifically deal with infill. Okay. Under Goal 4 of the 2012 strategic plan, item number 5, or item number 4, appropriate land uses for future development. Now that really has to do with the land use element, the future land use in the comprehensive plan. Item number 5 says future development, and here's the key word. Here is one of those 2 key words. Future development consistent. This is in the strategic plan that you have adopted, and that's in the town budget right now. Future development consistent with town's plans and standards. It couldn't be any more understood than that. Okay. In the budget, 2012-2013 budget, right here. Okay? Folks, you have adopted the comp plan. You may not know it, but you have adopted it in effect, because you've adopted the strategic plan and you've adopted the budget. On page 17 of the town budget, legislative department, and I'm sorry, but I don't understand really why it's under that category, but needless to say, the goal, facilitate future growth and redevelopment, is in the budget. Future development consistent with town's plans and standards. This is in the budget. Okay? And then the community development department, in your 2012-2013 budget, facilitate future growth, development, and redevelopment. And what do you think the very first item is under that? The very first item, and it's a big one. Implement the land use plan. And this is the community development department, folks. This is a big job. Now, I'm not saying that they will be the only ones, but it's listed in the budget, in the town budget, to do that. The land use plan is not the only element, but it's a major element in the comprehensive plan. Okay. Planning Commission meeting and from others that comprehensive plan is bureaucratic, that it will impede or hamper growth and economic development. And my response to that is, where is the evidence? The evidence lies with all the other plans that have been adopted and folded into the comprehensive plan. I gave you the example of Powell Acres. When the residents saw that their subdivision, right next to Costco, was shown on the land use plan map as commercial, they were ready to fight, and they did. They were discreet, and so the plan was amended by the Planning Commission to remove commercial from that subdivision and put it back as residential. That's the beauty of the plan, and work the way it should work.
Mr. Lyman, can I interrupt you just for a second? I'm not sure what point you're making about Powell Acres. Was that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a good thing. It's a good thing from the standpoint that this is what the absolute folks in Powell Acres saw their subdivision. They probably at their it's not zoning. And they saw the vision for their subdivision.
I'm trying to understand what this has to do with whether or not we adopt the land use plan. That would effectively make it harder for them to change if somebody disagreed with the vision. Or I'm a little confused. Trying to follow you here. Was so, but if we adopt it, then it's going to be that much harder to amend in the future. Okay.
Well, I think that
that
may be a little bit not exactly correct. If you adopt it, it becomes like an ordinance because you have to adopt it by an ordinance. And if you in the Tennessee Code says that once you adopt it, all land use decisions must be consistent with the plan, which means if you want to amend the plan, then not only does the Planning Commission have to consider it and agree to amend it, but then it has to come to you, and you have to adopt another ordinance amending it.
So it therefore becomes another bureaucratic hurdle, making it that much more difficult to amend. That's what I was trying to get at. I was not following your logic there. It seems like that the formally adopting it makes it that much more difficult for anyone to change it, or if they disagree or if they have a problem with it. It becomes that much more of a bureaucratic hurdle.
Well, and it is. There's no question about that. I think what you've got here is a philosophical issue of, do you want to have to amend two things if you think that the plan ought to be changed, or would it be better just to have to amend one thing? I mean, if you got the zoning and the zoning is residential, you want to change it to commercial. If the plan says that it's it's residential, then you got to go amend the plan, and then you got to rezone the property. So you got two things you have to accomplish, which I don't really understand why that's the procedure, but that's what the procedure is. And if you don't adopt it as a ordinance like we did the last time, this body didn't adopt it as by ordinance. So it's a good guide. It's an aspirational document that you want to try to follow because it's been thought out and considered. But you can do that when you rezone, frankly. You have that opportunity, and people can come and ask to rezone, and it just is a little more flexible not to adopt it by ordinance, it seems.
Right. Okay, that was my understanding. I just wanted to clarify that, so
Okay.
please continue.
Okay, not to be argumentative, Tom, but if I follow that logic, then that tells me that the strategic plan, which has been adopted, if something has to be changed, then it has to come back to the board, and they have to, by ordinance, amend the strategic plan. I don't believe that's happened.
I think a plan is a plan.
Yeah,
An ordinance is an ordinance.
I understand.
If the strategic plan is adopted as an ordinance for the town, arguably, if you wanted to amend it, you could only amend it by an ordinance.
Right.
And I don't think anybody wants to. These aspirational plans that we have are just that. They're aspirational plans. Ordinances are commands,
Right.
and everybody has to live by them. So if we start adopting every plan by ordinance, then we'll be doing nothing but adopting amendments when they don't seem to be working for what we are trying to accomplish.
Well,
Okay.
I'm going to be redundant to my comments to you at the Planning Commission. First of all, thank you again. You've been unbelievably candid and unbelievably cordial, and you're very accurate on what you say. As I said at the Planning Commission, you and I can't speak for the other members of this board, we'll just disagree on it. You know, having the opportunity to sit on the Planning Commission and on this board, I can confidently state everybody has buy-in to what we're trying to do and what we want to do. There is a tremendous investment of time, effort, and money into creating this plan, and I know that's a big point you make in this meeting and the previous one at the Planning Commission. But they're just to add on to what Tom mentioned. There's just no need to have it locked down that tight. You know, we have our guiding principles. We have the plans. I'm going to use slightly different language. There's a legal process we have to go through to change the comprehensive plan if we adopt it. And one of the things I've learned over my time on the Planning Commission and on my relatively short time on this board, there are times that speed is a necessity. And to have an unnecessary extra step in there just doesn't make sense. I'm going to slightly disagree with you on one comment. You said that the plan worked with Powell Acres. I would state the plan didn't work because the plan didn't exist yet. I would say the process worked with people coming here, stating their case, the Planning Commission listening, having great discussion, open discussion, candid discussion, and ultimately making a decision that was not only best for the citizens but was best for our community at that point in time. So, you're doing a great job of laying out your reasons. I can tell you there's nothing you can say that will convince me to do it differently. Although I respectfully agree with all of the underpinnings and all of your reasons, I just disagree with the final outcome.
Well, I would say that the planning process in the plan worked for Powell Acres. I would definitely say that. And let me make one more comment about being counterintuitive. I contacted the East Tennessee Development District recently, and of the towns that they work with, they're telling me that approximately 90% of the towns, the Planning Commission and their legislative body, whatever that is, has adopted their plan, their land use plan or comprehensive plan. I want to conclude, what does it mean to the planning commission, to the community, and the board to adopt the comprehensive plan? Going back to the strategic plan. Okay. On page 17, no, I don't know what the page number is, but under goal 4, facilitate future growth, development, and redevelopment. It means 5 things, at least 5. First of all, it means protection. Protection of what? It means protection of property and home values. Number 2, it means predictability. Predictable future growth and development. Number 3, it means preservation of the town's unique assets, their natural resources, their history, and their heritage. Number 5, it means that we have a beautiful community, a city beautiful, a town beautiful, that lets you know that you're in the town of Farragut. You drive on Kingston Pike, west of Lovell Road. You see a difference right away. At least I can. And finally, last but not least, it lets you have pride in the community. Thank you very much for listening.
We have one more citizen comment tonight. It's from Ms. Pavlin, and she also has comments on 2 other items on the agenda. So when we get to those, she wants to come back up and speak.
All right.
Mine's going to be a little bit shorter in length. And I'm not even sure if this comment is where it belongs. It's with regard to your land use plan, specifically for greenways. And I'm sure you guys are probably aware of, especially the ones that have done the land plan, you kind of know the greenways pretty well. But there is little more than 4/10 of a mile of greenway that, if developed, would make it possible for someone to walk from Bob Leonard Park to Lovell Road. The Fox Run Greenway ends at Everett Road. Grigsby Chapel Greenway can be picked up at one of 2 locations, on Cotton Blossom Lane in the Battery at Berkeley neighborhood. A greenway extending from along the interstate between the end of the Fox Run Greenway at Everett to the trail at the north end of Cotton Blossom Lane, or a greenway extending along Everett Road to the Oakley Downs neighborhood are the 2 options for connecting the Fox Run and Grigsby Chapel Greenways. I think this particular project should be on the top of your greenway development list. I'm a runner, and I see your green all over your plan, and it just makes me so excited that this is the 4/10 of a mile that could get you straight across to Turkey Creek. So I would love to see that happen. Oh, and the other thing was, I noticed in the paper yesterday, Heather had written an article about the Carastone Farms. They are required to improve the Everett Road from the exit of their subdivision to Smith Road, and I strongly urge that you make sure that they follow through with this. I drive on Everett Road because my children are in the zone for Hardin Valley Academy, and it is a very narrow road with pretty severe drop-offs in certain areas. It needs to be widened, and it would be nice to see a sidewalk there as well.
Thanks. Where does that 4/10 of a mile fit in our capital budget?
Well, we have greenbelt, greenway trails that we budget for each and every year, and internally staff has talked about a section that would connect that ends right now from Fox Run into Everett Road and goes through some right-of-way with TDOT and would connect in the back side of, I believe, Berkeley, the Battery at Berkeley Park. That's probably the closest route to take, but there's some issues with it because of the hill and working with TDOT that we have to go through. But that's probably of our shortest route to get to connect that entire project. So
When would it be scheduled?
it's not scheduled yet, Mayor. We talk about it each year about the priorities of the greenways, and right now we've got the Wentworth Trail bridge is kind of our top priority, and as soon as we can get that underway and get the easements with that, then we'll look at the next phase. So I can't tell you for sure, but I'm sure when we have our CIP discussion this spring, we can certainly talk about that.
Okay.
I will say that we've actually got a walkthrough scheduled. Ruth, help me out. Friday, we've put it off a time or two. We're waiting for decent weather. It's bad enough to fight briars. I don't want to do it when it's 12 degrees outside. But we will be walking through that and taking a look. We've looked at it in the past, and it's possible to make that connection, but it does have its difficulties.
This hill that you mentioned, is it one that we would have to take down, or is that what we're saying?
It's actually getting up from Everett Road up onto the TDOT right-of-way, the interstate right-of-way. From Everett Road, I mean, the interstate is, you know,
It's a
25 feet above Everett Road, getting up that slope without extending too far into the adjacent property. Could be a challenge, but it's something we could probably work out.
All right, so we're through with Citizens Forum. The next item is approval of the minutes from January 10th this year. Any discussion or motion?
Motion approved, minutes.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
No, I was not here, so I abstain.
Now we move to business items, and it's one issue, approval of the TDOT contract for Kingston Pike Greenway sidewalk improvement 1,200 feet east of Old Stage Road to Virtue Road.
Speaking of greenways, this is the approval of the TDOT contract that was in your packet for the development of this project, which will create a greenway connection between Old Stage Road and Virtue Road along the south side of Kingston Pike. The greenway would actually connect with the existing sidewalk in front of the townhomes at Wentworth on the western end and extend east along the Kingston Pike right-of-way in front of Willow Creek Golf Course to Virtue Road. Now, as you approach Virtue Road on that eastern end, the right-of-way is actually fairly narrow. This map you can't really show it on this scale. The right-of-way and the topography are such that we may have to kind of scrunch that down a little bit and have sidewalk with curb and gutter in order to limit the impact to the golf course. But that's the gist of this project. Currently we have funding set up for STP funding through the TPO's 2011 and 14 TIP with a total estimated cost of $1.05 million. That would be split on the standard 80-20 federal and local split. The contract that's in your packet outlines all of the responsibilities of the town as well as those of TDOT in the development of this project. So staff recommends approval.
Darryl, your thought on the safety aspect of that narrowing of the greenway from 8 feet down to about 5 feet? Any impact, do you think, or is that sufficient for the location, safety aspect of 5 feet, that losing that extra 3 feet?
Well, I mean, we would prefer to have an 8-foot greenway set off of Kingston Pike several feet. But if you're familiar with that spot along Kingston Pike, you can see that the topography, the ground drops off pretty sharply onto the Willow Creek Golf Course. If you're familiar with that particular hole, well, we don't want to impact the playability of the golf course at all. I can foresee the need for retaining walls, possibly some landscaping, which is why we have budgeted quite a bit of money, quite a bit of funding for landscape, walls, whatever we need there. But we'll try to, if we have to go down to the 5-foot sidewalk with curb and gutter, we'll try to keep that as minimal as possible.
What does that exactly mean, a 5-foot sidewalk with curb and gutter? Explain that.
Well, if you have a 5 foot, just the standard 5 foot sidewalk, typically that's offset, say 3 feet from the curb and gutter.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to be that close to the roadway, the curb and gutter really needs to be in place in order just to handle all the drainage, so that you can be pretty much at grade with the roadway. If you're going to be that close, you need to handle the drainage before it gets over to the sidewalk. Now, we have 1 or 2 locations in the town where we have concrete sidewalk adjacent to a roadway, or actually it's probably offset about 3 feet. A good example would be on Virtue Road, between Broadwood and about 1,000 feet south of Kingston Pike. I wish we had curb and gutter there, but we don't. The problem we wind up with is it becomes a maintenance issue when you're splashing mud and rocks and everything else from the roadway onto the sidewalk.
So if I understand you right, there's no curb and gutter on that section of Kingston Pike?
That's correct.
Okay, I was thinking there was. Now I understand. Thank you.
Darrell, will we ever look at completing all of it up to Sugarwood?
Well, this would connect up to Virtue Road, and from Virtue up to Sugarwood, there is a greenway that is actually
You have the greenway.
well offset from.
I'd love to have the
Kingston Pike.
sidewalk.
Well, this would be a good connection. It wouldn't be a sidewalk on Kingston Pike. I don't know. We don't really have any plans for sidewalk along Kingston Pike
Because of having
in
the
that way,
greenway.
in that area. But there is certainly the greenway connection, which most people would prefer to take anyway.
So, we need a motion on this.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Well, this is really a long contract. I had a couple of questions. How many utilities are along here? Is this going to be over the top of existing utilities? It says that
For the
The
most part, yes.
the agency, which is the town of Farragut, agrees to provide for and have accomplished all utility connections within the right-of-way and easements prior to the paving stage. So does that mean, it also says that we will assist and ensure that all utility relocation plans are submitted and approved prior to the project advertising for bids. So the town is basically paying for the cost of relocating all these utilities. Is that?
Typically, no. If the utility is on the existing right-of-way, it would be up to the utilities to move it. If we can work with utilities, leave them in place, and simply build a greenway over top them, I wouldn't have any problem in doing that. We always look at these things as though the ratepayers and the taxpayers are the same people. So we try to limit the impact as much as possible for utilities.
Okay, 'cause a lot of utilities run right down the middle of streets and whatnot, so I wouldn't see any problem.
Not crazy about it when they do, but we're aware that it does happen.
Okay, so we're not gonna be paying to relocate all these utilities that run along Kingston Pike, then, is what I'm trying to get at.
That's correct. Yes. These contracts are pretty much written. There's a lot of boilerplate in there that it covers everything, but
It's a long, wordy contract. I've read myself to sleep with it a couple times.
oh, this is an exciting read.
Oh, yeah. Or form in print, I think.
Mayor, we also have one citizen comment on this item as well.
All right.
I'm not sure if you realize this. If you build the sidewalk, it will extend, especially with Everett Road, Kingston Pike, we're getting the sidewalk there. It will extend a sidewalk from Everett Road all the way to Concord Road. So people have that ability to walk the entire distance. When my kid got kicked off the bus a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to make him walk to school, but I couldn't do that because there's no straight walk path. This sidewalk would connect that, and we need it. It gives us an opportunity to get down to downtown. If we ever build a downtown, this is an opportunity for someone. It's a 3-mile distance. People could walk that and get to downtown. I encourage you guys to really consider putting this final piece of that puzzle together, because it's just, we need to get these sidewalks in and down Kingston Pike.
Thank you. Darrell, when do we anticipate the engineering will be complete? And question one.
It's kind of hard to say. Once this is approved, we will go through the process of getting the project considered a categorical exclusion. That can take easily 3 or 4 months. And we will follow the Office of Locally Managed Projects. We'll follow their guidelines completely on this. We have to, it's a requirement. Once they give us notice to that we can proceed with engineering, then we will do an RFQ, choose a consultant, award a contract. They would do the design. I'm guessing in the neighborhood of 3 or 4 months. We could be certainly well into the next fiscal year by the time that design is done.
It's July, right?
Right.
So, but theoretically then, once that is done, we can advertise for bids and get on with the project. And do you see us?
Well, there would be the point where we would have to purchase right of way if necessary. I dare say there will be easements on this to try to avoid any right of ways. But we will be dealing with the owners of the Willow Creek Golf Course for if we have any easements required. That could take a little while.
Right. So we likely will not see this completed this year then, probably.
Most likely not this calendar year. But what we have budgeted right now in our CIP is for design as well as right of way. We tried to schedule that just in case we were able to get to the point that we could start working with the owners of the adjacent property and purchase right of way, purchase easements for that matter.
Okay. And then once this is completed, the engineering and the right-of-way acquisition, how are we going to advertise for bidders on this, and when will that be published?
It would be. I'm trying to remember exactly how this contract spells it out, but I believe under this contract, TDOT would be actually handling the construction.
So they will be advertising for bids.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now that may change between now and the time that it's ready to go, and we may be handling it in-house. It really depends on if TDOT makes any changes to the way they're doing business. Now, since it is along the state route, it's our thought that it should be the construction should be overseen by TDOT, and normally they will do that.
Yeah, they say they will.
Mm-hmm. But they may be look at it as an enhancement project and say, well, that should be managed by the local. It's always it can change part of the way through the contract.
So approval of the bid may or may not come before this body then.
May or may not. Right now, it will be through TDOT. TDOT reserves the right to make changes.
Okay, thank you.
It's because they're TDOT. They can do that.
I will second Alderman Hawkins' motion to approve.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This is just an aside, and I should have mentioned it earlier under Mayor's report. But yesterday I was elected chairman of the Knox area TPO.
The Knox area what?
TPO,
Oh.
Transportation
Yeah.
Planning Organization.
Well, congratulations. That's
Congratulations.
wonderful.
Um,
Yeah.
A feather in the hat.
So
Yeah.
whatever influence I can use to bear on these projects, we'll try. Now we move to ordinances, and these are all second reading of First one is ordinance 12-19, ordinance to amend the Farragut zoning ordinance, chapter 4, general provisions and exceptions by adding section 29, I think. Grand opening special events permit.
We talked about this at the last meeting, and the purpose of this ordinance is really to help out our smaller new businesses in town and to try to brand the grand opening sign that people would post, so that when you see the blue and white sign that you know that there's a grand opening going on and people will check it out. Obviously that's not the correct wording, but that gives you an idea with the dark blue background and the white lettering, how it makes the lettering very distinctive.
Excuse me.
And the town would provide the sign so that new businesses that are just getting started, that have a harder time with getting hit with expenses coming and going, that this is a good way for them to have a little extra pop in getting the notice out that they are open. We all know that good customer service and not large signs is what is the key to the success of any business, but our goal with this ordinance is to give a new business some additional publicity so that they have a greater opportunity to showcase their business and their customer service, which in turn will bring people back. But the Planning Commission and the staff recommended approval of ordinance 1219.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
We also have one comment for this item as well.
All right.
Thank you.
Who made the motion?
We did get a motion and a second.
Yes.
Yes.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Made the motion.
Next item is ordinance 12-20, ordinance to amend the Farragut zoning ordinance, chapter 4. General provisions and exceptions, section 14, outdoor site lighting to establish wall-mounted light heights and required glare shields.
This amendment was initiated by the Planning Commission during the discussions of the four-story business district, and the idea is that because we are going to be allowing taller buildings, that we keep the wall lights function as what they are intended to light the ground that is immediately below them, like sidewalks and adjacent and building entrances and things like that, but limit the negative glare onto adjacent properties. Now the slide before you is a picture of a wall-mounted light that shines down, and that meets these requirements. The second aspect of the ordinance is to add exterior glare shields to pole lights when they are next to residential areas that are at a lower elevation. Costco added exterior glare shields to their lights backing up to Powell Acres when we were reviewing their plans and asked them to consider that. And the residents of Costco, next to Costco, have been very appreciative of that because it really cuts down the problems. We've been dealing with complaints next to Publix, and we are working with the developer there to get glare shields added. So our goal with this amendment is just to notify folks on the front end that this will be a requirement so that we don't have the problems with the residents having to put up with the time frame, and also so developers know on the front end that this is something they have to take into consideration. The Planning Commission and the staff recommend approval of ordinance 1220.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next one is ordinance 12-21. Ordinance to amend Farragut zoning ordinance chapter 4, general provisions and exceptions, section 1, accessory structures to require HVAC screening to be architecturally compatible and to rename the section to accessory structures and uses.
Part of this ordinance was initiated by the Planning Commission, part of it was by staff. The section requiring the screening to not just be opaque, because that's currently what we require, but to also be architecturally compatible with the principal building. It came up at the Planning Commission during the discussion of the 4-story business district. Pictures before you show large HVAC units on the roof that are not screened. And obviously they took great pains with the buildings, with the design of the buildings in this, and I don't think that the architectural rendering probably showed the builders and all the parties involved the large HVAC units on top. Previous picture, you couldn't see the HVAC units because they were screened behind that parapet. The previous picture to that, you could see the HVAC units very clearly. And even when you get farther out with the picture, 2 pictures in, right from there, you can still see those HVAC units quite a ways away from the building. And so the idea is that we require them to be screened and be architecturally compatible. In this particular case, where the parapet would come up and screen the HVAC units. The other portion of the amendment is dealing with renaming the section to accessory structures and uses. And this is a result of a Board of Zoning Appeals ruling that the staff did not err in the application of requiring HVAC units to be screened, so that it would clarify whether someone were to interpret an HVAC unit as an accessory structure or an accessory use, that it's clear that this would be applicable to that. And also to add the term compactors, which has always been interpreted to be the same as garbage dumpsters and recycling containers, just to clarify for folks when they are going through our ordinances. The Planning Commission and the staff recommend approval of ordinance 1221.
I'll move to approve ordinance 1221 as written.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next one is ordinance 12-22, ordinance to amend the Farragut zoning ordinance chapter 3, specific district regulations, section 16, reserved for future use, to create a new commercial zoning district entitled Business District 4-story. And today we got some comments from a citizen, so would you address those?
Yes, I will. This district was discussed several times at the Planning Commission, at several workshops before it was voted on. And some of the items that the Planning Commission took into consideration was dealing with the reduced setback would encourage parking lots in locations other than in the front of the building, that the reduced setbacks would excuse me, provide a more creative site design and emphasize the architecture of the building rather than the parking lot. Excuse me. And then the other thing that the commission took into consideration was the concerns about tall buildings being close to the road and creating a canyon cavern feel along Kingston Pike, power lines being close to the edge of the buildings, and as a result having limited front yard space where you could plant shade trees and that sorts of thing, and the close proximity of the building to the roads and how that might affect future road projects. One of the things that the ordinance uses is the golden ratio or the golden mean, which is the 1.618, which when you Google it, there's different arguments as to how that came about, but what I was really getting at is the visual proportionality that ratio creates. And so we use that for determining setback requirements to create the flexibility that we were looking for with regards to the cavern feel that we wanted to ensure that we didn't have that. You all received an email earlier today with regards to some questions on the ordinance, and they had a question on how the setbacks would be measured. You have to look at all the sections of the zoning ordinance, because in chapter 4, I think it's section 6, it talks about setbacks and how you measure setbacks. So when the statement starts, all buildings shall be set back a minimum of 20 feet, rather than being redundant, we use parallel language in all the sections of the zoning ordinance dealing with the different districts to coincide with being compatible with that section in chapter 4 explaining how setbacks are measured. And in addition, access easements are not always on the same piece of property of which the parcel, but sometimes they are on the parcel. And so we needed to clarify that whether the access easement is on the actual parcel or adjacent to it, that the same setbacks would be required for those access easements. One of the other comments was anticipated roadway improvements such additional travel lanes, turn lanes, and bike lanes. The anticipated roadway improvements is if that's on plans that have been approved. For example, the Knoxville Regional Mobility Plan has already identified that Kingston Pike will be widened to 7 lanes between Smith Road and Campbell Station Road. So that would need to be taken into consideration because that's in an adopted plan. The other section with regards to bike lanes is we do need to assume that bike lanes will be built throughout town because we are following the complete street design for our street system. And some of you have gone through the training at Planning Commission with the complete streets is. It's basically, the design is to accommodate all our public right-of-way users, not just the vehicles, but also pedestrians and bicycles. And we actually further separate our bicycle category into bicyclists, as I fondly refer to them as the spandex group, and then the recreational bicyclers, which I fall into that category, which I don't want to be in with traffic. I prefer to be on a bike path that's adjacent to the road rather than a bike lane. And those things are known. They are anticipated because we know that they are coming and that we need to accommodate for them. And there is a definitive width for bike lanes. That's a standard engineering number. I got out and measured the one, and now for the life of me, I can't remember if it's 6 or 4 feet. Can you remember? It's 4 feet. Okay. See, Daryl knew it off the top of his head. Daryl knew it off the top of his head. So yes, there is a definitive width with regards to the bike lanes. And with regards to the question of saying that you calculate the setback based on dividing the building height by the 1.618, what is that, and then still establishing the minimum of 20 feet, what it is that if the building isn't as tall, if you take the building height and you divide it by the 1.618, your building setback may end up only being 5 feet. But what we're saying is, no matter what, the stricter shall apply, because that's elsewhere stated in our zoning ordinance, is that there's going to be a 20-foot building setback on the property. And that was kind of addressed all the comments that were made in that email that you all received with regards to that. The Planning Commission and the staff recommend approval of Ordinance 1222.
Ruth, are you going to respond to this fellow's email?
Yes, I plan on it.
Okay.
I didn't get it till later this afternoon, so.
Right.
And
Either the mayor or somebody.
I'm aware of that. Allison and I checked that out.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That brings us to the last ordinance. Ordinance 12-23, ordinance to rezone parcel 63, tax map 151, located on the southwest corner of Kingston Pike and Way Station Trail, part of the Renaissance development, approximately 2.5 acres from C1 General Commercial District to BD4 Business District, 4-story. Myers Brothers Holding applicant.
I just explained the new ordinance, and so it's pretty exciting that we have this, that someone is anticipating building per our new ordinance, that we went through this process. And so this is located at the corner of Way Station Trail and Kingston Pike, across from the Weigels, right before the curve on Kingston Pike. It is in front of and part of the Renaissance development. Immediately behind it, this area, there is a single-family house on the eastern side, and then the western side, it is where their detention basin for the development is located, and there's also an unnamed stream behind it. Excuse me. Actually, this rezoning for this location is an excellent location because the uses for the business district are more restrictive than they are for the commercial district, which is currently zoned the C1 General Commercial District. For example, gas stations, drive-through restaurants, outdoor sales and storage, none of that is allowed within the new BD4 district. And in addition, because of the ridge that is right there, the height of the building is actually no taller than what the church is across the way, but also because of the ridge that the residential units are built on, you're not going to have that feeling of being overpowered with it being too close or anything like that. And with the additional setback requirements within the zoning district, it actually will make it appear even farther away than what it would may feel if it were all in the same elevation. The Planning Commission and the staff recommend approval of Ordinance 1223.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second it.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Town Administrator's report.
I have nothing to report tonight, Mayor.
Attorney's report.
No report, thank you.
All right. In that case, we are adjourned.